I just woke up from a 6-hour nap. I don't know where I am, but let's work on some tattoos.
I use an awful lot of stuff to tattoo myself at home. A lot of it is not 100% necessary. A lot of it is just quality of life and to make stuff go faster or easier. But if you're on a budget, there is a limited amount of supplies that you absolutely need to go buy fresh for tattooing, mostly sanitation based. So today I'm going to break down all the various materials and how to go about hand poking a tattoo at home if you so choose to do that. I don't suggest it. I'm not a professional. Learn from my mistakes. 1. Buy new gloves. Even if you already have gloves at home, buy a box just for this. Stuff like needles and tattoo ink you should get from a reputable distributor. Probably don't buy them off Amazon, but you do you if you find it cheaper. There is stuff you can get at big box stores that's disposable, like tongue depressors, paper towels, and you can also go to Costco for green soap. Specifically use this green soap. You're going to mix it with distilled liquid in a clean container to keep stuff sanitary as you go. Also highly suggest buying actual tattoo balm like Hustle Butter. You'll need to use a brand new razor blade to get hair out of the way, especially if you're using a stencil. You need rubbing alcohol to clean your surfaces and your skin. I like alcohol wipes, it's just not as economical to do it that way. You also need to pick up scent-free soap for cleaning your brand new tattoo, especially while it's healing. That way it's not going to get irritated if you use something like this Bronner's Baby's Unscented. The green soap that I mentioned you can pick up at Costco or from a tattoo supplier. You're going to combine with distilled water. I have a big jug of it. You can just use like bottled water or something like that. Just don't use tap water. And you're going to mix it in a sanitary bottle. I like these squeeze bottles that are specifically for tattooing. I've tried all kinds of other bottles, but this makes life a lot easier than trying to use a little like spritz bottle or something you have laying around the house that can get really messy. So far a breakdown of the absolutely required to buy materials for tattooing is going to come out to about $65. Prices are going to vary, but this is my estimate at time of recording. So now I'm going to move on to highly suggested materials. First of all, in order to make a tattoo grip, I really like using a bamboo skewer and different medical supplies to make it easier to hold the tattoo needle. A lot of gloves, like the ones I'm wearing, actually do have some grip to them. And sometimes when I'm practicing, I won't even bother making one of these. I just feel like it makes life a little bit easier if this feels closer to what holding a pencil would feel like instead of a super thin little needle. I'll show you this method in a little more detail later on, but it's something that's been a work in progress. I've tried different tools to hold a tattoo needle, and this just seems to be the most comfortable for me. The cling wrap in particular makes this less likely to slide around in my hand, and it kind of gives me a space to just hold on to the needle. So I do suggest using this method if you're going to try this, even practicing. Now, ink cups are something I almost included in the first section, but you do what you're going to do. They're not that expensive. Also, you can DIY a sharps container where you put your old needles in. But you can also go to the pharmacy and pick up an actual sharps container, which later on you can like bring to a hospital and have it be disposed of. Also, things that make life easier, using something like Vaseline and some Sharpies will definitely help with keeping stuff stable and keeping stuff in place. So a Sharpie comes in handy in a bunch of ways. If you're going absolutely as affordable as possible, you can totally use a Sharpie to draw directly onto the skin. If you're just going for that like grungy hand-done tattoo look, this might work for you. If you're just doing a smiley on your best friend or whatever, a Sharpie totally works. So highly suggest having a Sharpie specifically for this purpose. But there is alcohol in Sharpie, so they're kind of sanitary. This is honestly, I'm being straight with you. Don't do as I say, not as I do. They're a gray area when it comes to sanitation in my mind. But if you want to make life a little bit easier and take this more seriously, it's worth investing about $40 in some stencil paper and some stencil stuff. You can also use Speed Stick if you don't feel like getting the special stencil liquid. We've done some experiments in the past and it works surprisingly well. It's just thicker. So for making your actual stencils, if you're not going to invest hundreds of dollars in a stencil printer, you can use one of these weighted pens or just a regular Bic pen works. I'll show you how to do that in just a moment. So stencil paper is going to be one of the bigger investments, but it does make life a lot easier and you can trace images. I really like these little weighted pens. I used to use them all the time. And as I mentioned, there's the brand name stencil stuff, and then there's the deodorant that you can use. It all comes out to around the same price when you really look at the volume. And then there's medical pens that you can use to like mark the skin if you're feeling fancy. I don't like them very much because I feel like they rub off really easily. All right, so if you're taking my advice and you're going to be using stencil paper, which is really just fun on its own, you can like make temporary tattoos with them. Here's a quick breakdown on how to use them. Early on, I was confused, and I would use this brown onion paper in the center. You need to throw it away. It's dirty from shipping. Don't use that. Use the top sheet. So in order to hand trace your drawings or whatever reference you're going to use, you tape it down, and then you can use either one of these like weighted carbon paper pens and go and check as you go throughout your project. Or if you're going to just use a regular old pen, Bic pens are the best, aren't they? I found these ones in Halloween colors and they make me happy. I will use a piece of transparent paper. You can just use some extra paper or something so that you're not drawing on your drawing. The nice thing about hand tracing your carbon paper is you can save the rest of the sheet if you're really on a budget. If you use a printer, you're going to have to keep it all together. So yeah, this is pretty nice. It just adds a lot of time onto the process. I like it. I think it's meditative, but sometimes you don't put a stencil down correctly and you need another copy of it very quickly, and you're just going to eat up hours of your day remaking a stencil. So it's up to you if you want to spend the literally hundreds of dollars on a printer, which have their own learning curve. So now that I've shown you all the additional supplies I suggest, I'm going to be honest, this has totally doubled the budget at this point. This is going to be closer to $140 at this point when it comes to materials. And finally, we're going to talk about fake skins. Practicing is important. A lot of people will buy like a bundle of stick and poke stuff and it'll come with this excruciatingly thin skin. Just throw it away. It is way too thin to actually use. I'll show you an example. I've tried it out before. This is actually thinner than skin is, so it will go through and you will be poking the table that you are using and dulling your needles and then getting frustrated that your needle, just don't use this impossibly thin skin. You can buy some practice skin. There's all kinds of different qualities that are of reasonable thickness that will show you if you're over poking. And you can also practice something before you actually do it on someone's flesh. The big brands are going to be stuff like Real Skin or Pound of Flesh. This one's, I believe, called True Skin. It was decently expensive, but this one's thick enough that you could tattoo both sides. So it kind of ends up being the same price if you have the cash to invest beforehand. I like this because it's stretchy and it feels like real skin and it helps you get in the practice of stretching. So here's an example of what I can get from a tattoo distributor and I've used before. And then there's some of the big brands that are kind of cool. They actually come in weird shapes and different skin tones and stuff like that. So really great for a portfolio. Now, altogether, our budget has gone out the window if you're thinking about getting one of those printers I keep talking about, but I don't show you in this video. I show in other videos. But here's a breakdown. If you want to save up so you can start tattooing yourself, it's a decent chunk of money. It's more than $100 on materials that I highly suggest you get. In addition to one of these, just a little tackle box. This one was like $3 at Daiso, and it sucks. So I ended up buying a like cosmetologist's case off eBay. I think I spent like $60 because I was like, ooh, purple. I want it because it's purple. And it's a lot nicer to keep all of my sanitary materials in. So one other thing that you could totally buy and make your life easy. You're at like $150, but if we compare this to actual professional tattoos, which will run you hundreds of dollars just for one tattoo. So ultimately only do this if you really want to be tattooing. Like that's what's important. I also got a container that keeps all my supplies out in the open so that I see them and I work on my projects, because if I put it away, I forget it exists. Looking at this case reminds me of stickers, so I'm going to change the subject. I swear it's related to tattoos. When you're thinking about your design, think about stickers. Think about it being legible from far away. We're going to move on to practicing now, because I could just make another video entirely about design. So when I practice, which I suggest you do for multiple reasons, I should be wearing gloves. You should be wearing gloves. I put on gloves later. I am human. I'm going to be doing one experiment with the stencil stuff. I'm going to be doing another one with the speed stick, just to show you that they're fairly comparable. Sometimes on skin, the speed stick just comes out really thick and your stencil might bleed a little bit. But the reason that we're going to sit down and we're going to practice is not only to know for sure what you're doing, it's to get a feel for like how tired your hand's going to get. It's to practice only poking at a certain depth, and also just to get in the flow of setting up your station in general. When I'm working on this by myself, I don't really pay attention to time, and I never realize until someone else is over that I spend like 90 minutes setting up my station, getting everything ready. That doesn't even include making the stencil, so it's good to kind of be practiced at this as well. So finally putting those gloves on. I have some paper towels prepped. When I'm actually tattooing, I'll get a lot more ready. And I also put some petroleum jelly off to the side. During an actual tattoo, I would use something like hustle butter or tattoo goo, but just because of the price difference, I'm just only going to use the Vaseline this round. The use for something like Vaseline or tattoo butter is to put a thin layer down on the surface as you're tattooing. It keeps the ink from spreading into the skin and making it hard to see what you're doing. So every time you open your ink, also use a paper towel. Might have noticed when I was shaking it, I put a paper towel on the top. That's because I've had tattoo ink explode in my room on more than one occasion. It does not come off anything. But yeah, so here we go. We're going to do a practice round. One of the things with fake skin that's kind of infuriating, as I mentioned, it's very dry. It doesn't have internal moisture like the human body does. So it's barely going to show, and you're going to have to do a few passes. This is a good reflection of what actually poking is like, because it does take a couple passes. Unless you're going back and forth like a sewing machine, it's just slow and methodical. But fake skin in particular doesn't quite take the ink as fast as you might like it to. So I think this is about 3 passes that we did on this little doggo. And that's just to give you an example. If you're not going to buy fake skin and practice with it, you can always use paper. It's not going to give you the sense of depth that you would get from fake skin, but it will give your hand the practice at poking and to find out how sore you're going to get, see if your hand is going to cramp up. You don't want your hand to cramp up mid-tattoo. So I know we've gotten through more than half the video already where we're just talking about the beginning stages, but I just need to emphasize how important your materials are. Sanitation for your station is something we go over in a lot of other videos, and practicing is also very important. But here, watching a weirdo on the internet tattoo the back of their leg. So here's one of those magical miracle Sharpies. Before I put down any stencil stuff, I will make some marks on my leg just to like make sure that area is shaped correctly, and I'll clean off any of that carbon paper. I want to put the stencil stuff everywhere I need it to be, not miss anywhere. Even though I did this, I still ended up missing an edge, but I've got one of those pens and I can go in and mark what I need. I'll be honest, this stencil that I'm putting down, I should have gone and made an outline. I ended up just printing the original band logo, and it would have been easier if I had outlines. So hand draw your stencils, highly suggest, be a lot better. I had drawn my interpretation of this logo and just decided I like the original one better, so I'm just putting the original logo down as is. While that is sitting on my leg, I'm going to take 10 or 15 minutes to set up. That gives the carbon paper time to dry and to set into the skin a little bit better, which we highly suggest. Sometimes I've worked on other people and they were a lot like greasier or their skin wasn't well exfoliated, and you lose the stencil very quickly. So you want to give it as much time to dry as you can. Once again, we are using brand new tattoo needles, not sewing needles. We're not using calligraphy ink. We're using tattoo materials. Back in the day, tattoo needles used to be really expensive. Luckily, now they're not, and you can buy them for cheap. So you're going to buy them and you're going to make sure they're not expired. I am once again making these tattoo grips. I've worked with a weighted grip in the past. I got it off of Etsy and I got a couple of them, and they come sanitary and they're very nice because they're heavy. It makes it easier to poke. But even just soaking them in alcohol, they just didn't feel like they were clean all the time. So I like these. It also makes cleanup a lot easier. I don't have to pull a needle off of anything. I don't have to fight little rubbers or anything. Just these things on popsicle sticks can go straight into the sharps container and I never have to think about it again. So now what I'm going to do is use that petroleum jelly on some popsicle sticks in order to keep my cups from moving, because spilled ink sucks. And then I'm going to make sure my leg is nice and comfortable because I'm going to be holding this position for the next few hours. I end up putting a pillow underneath the towel that I'm sitting on to bring my body up. A lot of times I go numb very quickly. You get tingly and you get focused on what you're doing and you don't think about it anymore. So make sure you're comfortable. Then we'll grab some alcohol wipes and we'll do one last pass over everything. I didn't show it in this video, but I disinfected before I even put the stencil down. You don't know what happened between then and now, so wash your hands and then wipe down with alcohol. Put on brand new fresh gloves before you finally start the poking. Step 1. Put a very thin layer of tattoo balm down. Very bit, like thinner than what you see here. This is even too thick. I like to have a paper towel at the ready to dab any excess ink as we go. Otherwise it's going to dry in place and you're going to have to spend time scrubbing at your stencil, wasting your own time. You dip just the tip into the ink. You don't need too much ink on your needle, but too much ink will make things hard to see. And then you begin poking. It's a very different feeling than practicing, and there's a very specific sound that I listen for, so I go slowly at first. Basically, the sort of science behind this is you're poking a hole in the skin, and then as you pull the needle out, some suction pulls the ink into that layer of skin. So I am doing a sort of flicking motion at a 45-degree angle so that I can try to get the ink into the finish. I also had to wipe away as much of the stencil as I could because it was so dark I couldn't see if the ink was taking it all. That is something else that you kind of learn with practice, that you can see ink sitting on top of the skin, and it's not until you wipe away that you'll have a good idea of how much made it into the skin. Now, I mentioned a popping sound. It's hard to hear because I have said band playing, but listen carefully. Gee golly willikers, I sure hope you like extreme thrash metal, because that was a lot louder than I realized. If you couldn't hear it, there's been other videos I've posted recently where I had a mic right up against my skin so you could get a sense of what that's meant to sound like. But we were listening for some little pokey sounds, and that's a good rule of thumb. I like listening to music. Usually I'll have headphones in, and I just didn't put headphones in this time. It is kind of the pace at which I end up poking at. So did a few passes and made decent progress on making sure that I know where this outline of this tattoo is. And then I had to stop for the night because my leg hurts, because I'm holding it stupid and I'm twisting my body. Actually, I was getting a cramp in my side. So this is what the tattoo looks like so far. It's one of the beauties of not only stick and poke, but doing it yourself, is you can actually take all the time in the world to let it heal, like wait a couple weeks to a month and see how much falls out, and then you can come back to it later. So thanks for checking out this how I tattoo myself at home vlog. Let me know if you have any feedback, and it will impact my next video. Huzzah!